quiche, I'm going to line a 23cm fluted flan tin with the short crust pastry that I've made already and it's chilled. I've got out here a selection of different tins. If you don't have the right size or shape tin, it's not crucial, you can make most of whatever size you have. Sometimes it's nice to use little individual flan tins, or a rectangular one is a very good shape because they're easy to cut, particularly for parties. Or you can use a sandwich tin, either a round or a square one, that will give the nice straight sides to it. Or you can use a flan tin or a bun tray, and when you've rolled out the pastry you can use a round cutter to cut out shapes to line each of these cavities with it. So it doesn't matter what shape you make them, just use whatever tins you have. So my rolling pin for rolling it out, I've actually recently discovered these spacers. So these make sure that the pastry is of an even thickness. So you just pop them onto either end of the rolling pin. As I say, these are something I've only recently started using. You don't need them, you can just roll it out and judge it by eye. And so that the pastry doesn't stick when I'm rolling it out, I'm going to dust the surface with some plain flour. I'm going to press it lightly into a ball. I don't want to be kneading it a lot. I don't want the gluten to develop in it because that will make it tough. So as I'm rolling it, I'm turning it around, but I'm keeping it so I'm always having that side as the top. Don't flip it over because the back of it isn't as nice as the top is. So I'm going to use a little bit of flour. Try not to use too much flour because it will dry your pastry out. And when I'm rolling it, I'm just pressing it fairly gently. If you were to press it really, really hard, what you do is you pull the pastry and stretch it, and the gluten in it will then shrink back, and the pastry then will shrink as it cooks. So it won't keep a nice shape. So I need to get it to a big enough circle for lining my tin. If it starts to stick a little bit, you can use a palette knife under it to help release it, and then use a little bit more flour. Make sure that the rolling pin stays nice and clean. Got a little bit of dough that's stuck onto that one. Get rid of that. So with the spacers on the rolling pin, I can see it's now not getting any thinner, so I've got it to a nice even thickness, and that's just about big enough for my tin. I can either lift it by putting my hands underneath it to lift it up, but sometimes that will stretch it. So the easiest way to lift it is to actually roll it around the rolling pin, put the tin underneath, and then to unroll it. I didn't get that very central, so I'm going to slide it over a little bit. So I want it so it just hangs over the edges of the tin slightly. And I'm going to press it right in at the base. And press it against the sides well, so that when it comes out you'll see all the indentations of the flutes. got a little bit missing there, but I've got some extra there, so I'm going to break that off and press it over the top. You can use the back of your finger to press around the base. Make sure it's completely lined. There's a little hole I can see there as well, so I'm going to put a bit of the pastry from that side over the top. And I've got a baking sheet here that I'm going to put it on. And I'm just going to let the pastry hang over that edge. I'm not going to neaten it at this stage because I'm going to cook it and then cut it level when it's baked, because if the pastry does shrink a little bit, it means I won't be left with any holes on the sides. So that I need to put in the fridge now and chill it for about 10 to 15 minutes. Again, it's chilled to keep the pastry cool so that the gluten doesn't develop, so it doesn't shrink too much during the cooking. So I'm going to bake the pastry case first before I put any filling in it, because that way you don't have a soggy pastry bottom to your quiche. So I need to bake it blind, which means lining it with a sheet of baking parchment. So I need to lift that off, scrunch it up, and then lay it inside the tin. And to keep it weighted down and to keep the sides up, I'm using some baking beans. If you don't have baking beans, you can use rice with it, dry rice, or dried beans like dried kidney beans, just something to give it extra weight. Or if you don't have those, what you can do is line it with a sheet of baking parchment and then scrunch up a large piece of foil and put that in the middle to weight it down. So now that's lined, it's ready to go in the oven. So I'm using a fan oven, so I've set it to 180 degrees. If you've got a gas oven, put it on gas 6. So I'm going to put this in. And I'm going to set the timer for 15 minutes. And then while that's cooking, I'm going to start getting ready the filling. So for the filling, I'm going to cook it in a pan, and I'm actually using my induction hob rather than the main hob, just so I can have this in front of me so it's easier for you to see that if I have my back to you frying on the normal hob. So in my pan, I've got a tablespoon of oil. I'm going to heat that up. This should heat fairly quickly, and when I can feel that it's getting warm, I'm going to add a chopped onion to the pan. And I've got 4 rashers of bacon that I've chopped up. My favourite is actually smoked streaky bacon. So that's what I'm using here. So I need to cook this for a few minutes so that the onion softens but doesn't colour too much and cook through the bacon. Okay, so this is now cooked. So it's starting to turn golden. It's not coloured very much at all. So I'll turn the heat off and then leave the pan to one side to cool, just while I wait for my pastry to come out of the oven. So that's the timer going for the pastry. So stop the timer and take the pastry case out. Now what I want to do is to remove the beans. So I'm going to lift up the paper and tip them into a bowl to cool. And then, if you have a look at the pastry, you'll see it's still got some damp patches on it. Okay, leave that one running and just take So I'm going to put this back into the oven now, so it's uncovered for 3 minutes. It might take between 3 and 5 minutes to cook the pastry all the way through. So I'll set the timer first of all for another 3 minutes. Stop. Thank you.
Okay. It's going.
So that's 3 minutes up on the timer. Let's have a look at this. I can still see some damp patches on it slightly, so I'm just going to pop it in for another 2 minutes. So for the filling, I'm going to cook it in a pan, and I'm actually using my induction hob rather than the main hob, just so I can have this in front of me so it's easier for you to see that if I have my back to you frying on the normal hob. So in my pan, I've got a tablespoon of oil. To heat that up, so this should heat fairly quickly. And when I can feel that it's getting warm, I'm going to add a chopped onion to the pan. And I've got 4 rashers of bacon that I've chopped up. My favourite is actually smoked streaky bacon, so that's what I'm using here. So I need to cook this for a few minutes so that the onion softens but doesn't colour too much and cook through the bacon. Stop. Okay, so this is now cooked. So it's starting to turn golden. It's not coloured very much at all. So I'll turn the heat off and then leave the pan to one side to cool, just while I wait for my pastry to come out of the oven. So that's the timer going for the pastry. So stop the timer and take the pastry case out. Now what I want to do is to remove the beans. I'm going to lift up the paper and tip them into a bowl to cool. And then, if you have a look at the pastry, you'll see it's still got some damp patches on it. So I'm going to put this back into the oven now, so it's uncovered for 3 minutes. It might take between 3 and 5 minutes to cook the pastry all the way through. So I'll set the timer first of all for another 3 minutes. So that's 3 minutes up on the timer. Let's have a look at this. I can still see some damp patches on it slightly, so I'm just going to pop it in for another 2 minutes. So that's the 2-minute timer. So that looks to me as if it's cooked. So I'm going to close the oven up and I'm going to turn the heat down now, because I don't want it to be so hot when I'm cooking it with the filling in it, because the eggs will get too hot and may curdle. So on a fan oven, I turn it down to 160. If you were using a gas oven, that's gas mark 4. So to neaten the edge of this tin, I'm going to cut around it with a sharp knife. Taking care not to actually cut into the tin. I don't want to damage the non-stick surface of the tin. So I can just shake away the excess, break that off. Then I'm going to tip this into the bin. And pop it back onto the baking tray. So now I can spread the filling over the bottom of it. And spread it out to completely cover the base. And then I've got the 100 grams of grated cheese. It's good to use a nice strong cheese to get a lot of flavour. So I've got an extra mature, it's actually a vintage cheddar that I'm using. But Gruyere is also a good cheese to use in this. Then for the custard, the filling part of it, I've got 300 ml, so 1 carton of whipping cream, and I'm going to add to that 3 eggs. And I'm going to break each egg one at a time into a small bowl, because that way you can make sure that you don't have any shell. I've just got some there in it. You can use the actual shell to take it out, and you can make sure the egg hasn't gone off. So 3 eggs. And then I need some salt and pepper. Although I normally love black pepper on everything, I tend to use white pepper because I think in a quiche sometimes black pepper can look a little bit like you've got specks of dirt. And then some salt. And I'm going to whisk that together. Just make sure it's nice and smooth. And then pour this into the pastry case. And then I'm going to put that into the oven. And it needs to cook for 30 to 35 minutes. So I'll set the timer for 30 minutes. Okay, so the timer's just gone. I'm going to have a quick look at it, and I can see that it's still very pale on one side. So I'm going to set the timer again for another 5 minutes. So it's had its extra 5 minutes. Let's have a look. Yep, that is looking good now. It's a light golden colour. I don't want to overcook it. If I overcook it, then the protein in the eggs all set and coagulate, and it goes quite sort of watery texture. So I'm going to take it off the baking tray onto a wire rack. So on the wire rack, the air can circulate around it better so that it will cool quicker. And I'm going to leave it like that for about 5 minutes before I take it out of the tin, so that the filling will start to cool and set before I try to move it. So now it's cooled a little bit, I'm going to take it out of the tin to cool completely. So I've got a tin here, that happens to be a tin of baked beans, but any sort of tin will do for this. And because it's a loose bottomed flan tin, I find the easiest way to take it out is to rest that on the tin, and then if it's stuck at all, just ease it around, that's it. And then I can put that back onto the cooling rack and leave it to cool. I actually tend to think that the quiche tastes best served at room temperature, so I'll leave it on there until it's sort of almost cold and then cut it up and serve it. But you can, once it's completely cool, wrap it well in cling film and leave it in the fridge for up to 2 days. and then either serve it cold, or you can rewarm it in a sort of moderate oven for a few minutes before you serve it. Anyway, that's our bacon and cheese quiche.